I'm going to start out by saying you are probably the first person and the only person I've ever known that has been tased. And I'm going to say that's a good thing.
It is. It is.
And I'm going to ask you about it later, but first we're going to start some background. So
Okay.
we both were in the same class in school.
Correct.
And a lot of people don't know this, but I only went to the South Knox for 2 years.
I was going to say, I don't remember you throughout, like from grade school or anything like that.
Right. But when you come into a school where most of the people have been there the whole time, you just assume that everyone else has been there the whole time.
You do.
So tell me, did you start out at South Knox?
I did. Started in Monroe City in kindergarten and was at South Knox all the way through until graduation.
Okay. So what was your family life like?
I am the youngest of 8.
Wow.
However, the nearest one to me is 8 years older than I am. So a lot of it growing up I was almost like an only child, so to speak, because my oldest sister was way out of the home and had kids older and the same age as myself.
So you had more moms and dads than just
correct.
one.
And my nieces and nephews, so to speak, I grew up with them more or less as cousins. And that family dynamic is still the same. We're more like cousins than we are aunts and uncles and nieces and nephews. And as a matter of fact, the only time they call me Aunt Wendy is when they want something.
That's what aunts are good for.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I remember that your family was musical.
Very musical.
Were you musical too?
Yes.
So you were in the band? I don't remember.
I didn't play anything because my brother Dennis, the one closest to me, he did the drums, and that's what I did. So yeah, going back to the whole girl thing, girls couldn't do that. So I sang and was kind of pigeonholed into Torch and Twang, the lead, Patsy Cline, that sort of thing, which in the 80s was not cool, but
it wasn't cool with our crowd.
Right.
But was it cool with the paying crowd?
Well, yes, actually it was. I mean, everybody loved it, but I stood up there and hated every minute of it, not realizing as an adult just what I was doing.
So after college or after high school, you went to college.
Correct.
At VU.
Correct.
And if my research is right, you got a degree in culinary arts?
Absolutely.
Okay, so tell me about that.
Well, I thought I would become the next, well, at that time there was no Gordon Ramsay, but in my own mind, I would have been the next Gordon Ramsay. However, after going to culinary school, I learned that I only like to cook what I want to cook when I want to cook it. Not to mention the fact that you spend 80 to 90 hours a week in a restaurant. And when you break down what everybody else is doing at 40 hours a week, you're not making a whole lot of money. And so I didn't pursue culinary arts.
But do you still enjoy cooking?
Absolutely.
I was thinking I saw on Facebook some recipes that you'd shared off and on.
Yes, and as a matter of fact, what I have dubbed the tribe, which is 3 very close friends, we have culinary adventures. I will research certain things, and then we try to get together once a month and have these culinary adventures. We do Thai food, Greek, anything that I can find that's kind of out there that is not, you can get on a food truck or something of that nature. And we get together and we destroy somebody's kitchen and we eat. As a matter of fact, I was literally researching today Phu Pad Pong, and yes, that's a real thing, and it's actually crab yellow curry, and that's going to be our next adventure.
Oh, that sounds good. Maybe I'll get invited to the tribe someday.
Maybe.
How do you get from culinary arts to law enforcement?
Accident.
Okay. Is it an interesting story?
Well, I was working part-time at the IGA store in Bicknell as a cashier, and wanted to pick up another part-time job because I had just recently moved back up from Evansville. And so Vicki Dryman, Greg Dryman, who also graduated with us, his mother worked at the sheriff's department and said, hey, we have an opening for a part-time dispatching position. I said, oh, okay. So I went in and I applied. I was hired. And now some 30 plus years later, here I am.
Now that we're here, what is your official title?
I am what is called the IDACS Coordinator, and that is a fancy term for a chief warrant officer. So to easily explain it, when you watch TV or something and you hear about how you have someone in the state of Indiana that gets maybe pulled over, and you find out that they have a warrant in California, that IDACS system is also hooked into a national system. So when I enter warrants into that system, that's how they know you have a warrant in other states. So I'm responsible for that. You have to have FBI clearance and different things to do that sort of thing. And then my other title is the Sex and Violent Offender Registry Coordinator for Knox County. And that entails keeping track of sex and violent offenders who are out on the street after they've either been released from county jail, work release, or the Department of Corrections, whether they come from a different state, in-state, or whatever. And it's a mountain of paperwork a daily, and it is very intensive, and it gets kind of scary sometimes trying to keep track and finding these folks, but I don't do it alone. But that's my two main jobs. And then I sideline being on the floor as a jailer.
You started out in dispatch,
Correct.
and now you've got these two very important titles and some extra part-time. Is there steps that you went through to get there?
Kind of. I started out part-time dispatching for the Knox County Sheriff's Department only. And then when everything consolidated into emergency dispatch and or the 911 system for the entire county, I got involved in that because Sheriff Jerry Mooney at the time wanted someone he knew and trusted as one of his dispatchers to be in the 911 system. So I did that for a few years. I got married and moved to Tipton County, and I did that up there as well. And I kind of finally got to the point where it was difficult for me to handle it because I had gone through several very traumatic phone calls involving death of officers, death of children, and different things. And there's a lot of stress, and people don't realize that even though you're behind a phone, you're living in that with the law enforcement and the firefighters and the EMS personnel that show up. And sometimes what we imagine in our head is sometimes a lot worse, or maybe it's not as bad in our brain as it really is when it's on scene. So I wouldn't call it post-traumatic, but I finally got to the point where I just couldn't deal with that. And I was doing jail stuff on the side of the dispatching. And finally I thought, you know what? I want to do the jail stuff full time. So when I went from dispatching to the jailing full time, I did that in Tipton County. Long story short, not that that was very short, got divorced and I came home. And Knox County opened me back up with open arms because I did part-time jailing before I left, and opened, like I said, with open arms, and here I am. Sheriff Mike Morris was the sheriff at the time, and found out through the grapevine that I had assisted one of the deputies in Tipton County with the sex offender registry and said, hey, could you? And I said, sure. So I assisted a deputy here for a while until Sheriff Morse decided that I needed to do it full time. Also through the grapevine, found out that Wendy still had her IDACS certification left over from dispatching. And he said, would you take care of my warrants for me? Yes, sir. So here we are.
That pesky grapevine
Yes.
turned out good this time, though.
Sheriffs among themselves have no secrets.
From dispatch to where you are now, what has surprised you most about what you're doing in law enforcement? What did you not expect?
Honestly, I didn't expect that what I do was really as important than it is. I have grown to understand just what I do. Now, I always knew that being involved in law enforcement and the dispatching and the jailing, that I was doing a public service. But this part of it is truly a full-time job and the impact that it has. And I don't think that I really realized what impact I have had on my community since I started doing this.
And that's exactly why you're here,
Okay.
because you have such a positive impact.
And I sit in an office and my face isn't out there, so to speak. I'm more behind the scenes because, like I said earlier, I don't do this alone. Deputy Johanna Carney is what I consider my right-hand person. She's the boots on the ground. She's the one that goes out and she arrests any offenders that don't comply with the registry. Now, that's not to say that I'm not pulling strings behind the scene, but her face is the one out on the street.
Mm-hmm.
And with all of that, like I said, I didn't realize the impact that I had. And there's a lot of people who know me that I'm like, hi, I'm not sure who you are, but okay, you know me apparently.
Describe a typical day from the time you get to work until you leave.
Well, usually the first thing in the morning is grabbing paperwork that has been taken over or served, such as warrants or different things like that, and gathering all that up and making sure that I get it through to the courts because everything has to be returned to them. Make sure that they are removed from 3 different systems in case we can't really arrest somebody twice on a warrant. Gather up anything comes in from overnight from maybe sex offenders, which is rare. And then I drink coffee for a little while. I'm not gonna lie. There's a lull in the action for a bit. About 9 o'clock or so, I will get new warrants from the courts. And that usually takes me a couple hours because again, like I said, there's 3 different places that I need to enter these warrants, make sure everything is proper, all the identifiers are correct, and add pictures to different things. And it's a process. Mm-hmm. And where I had mentioned the FBI, I literally have to run a criminal history on every person when I enter a warrant. And when I get done doing that criminal history, I often know more about a person than they know about themselves. And it's all confidential information, like date of birth, social security numbers, and different things like that. I know every traffic ticket, everything you've ever done in your entire life that's had any involvement with law enforcement or the court system.
Is that national?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
So you are given what they call an FBI number. So if you've ever been arrested for anything, you'll have what is called an FBI number, and that stays with you for the rest of your life. It's kind of like a social security number. So it's attached to every charge, so I know everything about you. And then that is put into the systems. So if you get pulled over by a police officer in a different state, he now knows everything about you because of the information I input into that system. So one warrant to put it in the local system, the Indiana state system, and then the national system Each warrant takes about 20 to 30 minutes to complete.
So a lot of time.
A lot of time. Very, what's the word am I looking for? It's intensive as far as accuracy, and it's very tedious.
That's going to lead to my next big curious thing. If you compare working with the Knox County Sheriff's Department with some of the larger areas in the country, you think you have it easier, harder? Is there any comparison?
Actually, I think that it's probably virtually the same because the process is going to be the same. However, larger counties or municipalities, they're going to have, of course, more personnel. So that helps out a lot. With the sex offender registry, so to speak, Marion County has a team of like 20 to 25 people that work on their registry. Here, it's just me and Deputy Carney. And we have 120 some, I think it's 126 when I looked at it today, active sex offenders in our county that we keep track of. So, you can only imagine what Marion County has. And then say Lake County, Crown Point, and places like that. I couldn't imagine. But however, they have larger teams to assist and take care of that. They have like maybe one coordinator, which is what I do, but then a whole team of other people that assist that coordinator.
So if you could have any superpower to help you with your job, which one would you want?
I don't know that it's a superpower, but patience. Sometimes my patience is very, very thin. I have a problem with stupidity. In my line of work, that's job security. I just don't understand why people can't follow the rules. You know what got you in trouble in the first place, right? So if you have a court date, show up. That way you don't get a failure to appear warrant. If you have a registry requirement, do it. Then I don't have to put you in jail for it. I guess doing the right thing, which was, taught to me from an early age, regardless of whether it's great personal risk, you still do the right thing. And so therefore, patience, a lot of times I don't have a whole lot of patience.
I'm thinking about younger women who might be thinking about going into law enforcement. Would you say that patience is the one thing that they have to have, or is there something else that would be more important, a personality trait?
Well, you're going to have to be patient, that is for sure, because it's still a male-dominated field. And you're also going to have a lot of persistence. Just don't give up. You're going to get shot down. Honestly, I've been shot down more times than I can count for promotions, trainings, and different things. And it's because it is male dominated. But if you're persistent and prove yourself, and unfortunately you have to prove yourself, that if you can do that, it's out there. I know several female officers, wonderful people. And if you find other female officers or jailers or even law enforcement adjacent people, like maybe children and family services, lawyers, different people like that you have like a safe space with, which I dubbed the tribe earlier, that's my safe space. We can all get together because we're all involved in law enforcement or law enforcement adjacent. That we can air out our problems. We can figure out how to fix our problems and that sort of thing. So you just need to just be persistent, prove yourself, and don't give up. It's hard, very hard. And there are days that I walk out of that sheriff's office and I think to myself, I'm not going back tomorrow. And then I make a phone call or send a text and I get talked off of that ledge and I go back. And I've done it for 33 years.
How do you unwind? Because I'm just picturing the mental load. There's got to be, I remember seeing you on a motorcycle one time and I was thinking, I wonder if that's how she unwinds, if she gets out on the road.
I do. I don't write as often as I used to. Age has got a lot to do with that.
Yeah.
We're not gonna talk about that part.
No, we are not.
But I garden. I read. I do not drink. That is one thing that I've made sure to do. But over the years, I've also learned how to flip a switch. I am a completely different person when I am not in uniform. Completely different. And
Wait. Is that laid back?
yes,
Okay.
when I am in uniform, I have quite a reputation. And it's not a pretty one at times. And I'll own that all day long.
You have to do what you have to do.
Yes. But the minute I walk out of that building, I flip that switch off and I become me. And I'm rather goofy. I'm a nerd. And there's still a lot of people that I work with that still don't really even know who I am and have known me for years. They have no idea what I'm like outside of that building.
Well, they're going to be curious after they hear
Oh,
this.
for sure.
Looking back over your whole life, is there a woman that made an impact that has stuck with you?
Well, honestly, there's a couple. Detective Stacy Reese that was here in Vincennes for a while, but now she's over in Washington. And we have been best friends for a very long time. And watching her persist and continue to fight some of the things that she had to fight to become a detective and be as good at what she does, I had to admire that, even though she's younger than I am. She just put it out there. She told people how it was. Not that I never did that. No. But I admired that. She admired me in return. Not real sure why, but she did. And she is part of the quote tribe, unquote. And right now, Deputy Johanna Carney, I rely on her so very much for everything inside that office and out. And outside, again, she is completely different than what she is when she's on duty. And we're goofy together. And if you decide to interview her later, because it's her story to tell, that woman is and has overcome a lot. And in my mind, she is a formidable woman for everything that she's overcome. And it just, sometimes I'm in awe of her, everything that she has completed.
Mm-hmm.
And just, like I said, just strictly in awe of her.
We will have to get her on here.
Yeah, she's a wonderful person, wonderful person.
So do you have advice for women like me? Well, not just women, anybody who is on the outside, on the streets, just a citizen who wants to support you and not even necessarily show gratitude, just be supportive. Is there anything that you wish that we would see or do or?
If you see it, tell somebody. That's the community really is very helpful, especially with the sex offender registry. Keeping those guys in line. I shouldn't say guys because there are a few women on there as well. That community action helps us keep these folks one in line, know where they're at, what they're doing. Now, having said that, not all sex offenders have specific requirements as others. There's different levels and different things, and there's some things that are actionable. There are some things that are not. But being involved in your community, knowing who's out there and who's around, and then, like I said, even sex trafficking and different things like that, if you see something that just does not seem right, tell somebody. Because it goes on a lot more than what we realize. And the community involvement with law enforcement, and I understand that there's a whole lot of people don't have a trust in law enforcement. And I understand that. Because there are times that I get angry at law enforcement. I'm not gonna lie. And I also get angry with the judicial system. And that's another thing that the community needs to get involved in. If you don't like the way maybe bonds are set, or laws governing sex offenders, or how people can get out on work release, or different things like that, it's not the sheriff's department's fault or the police department's fault. That is the court system, the prosecution system, and our legislative system. So if you're not happy about some of that, yeah, you can yell at me all you want to, and I'll take it. But you need to yell at the people that do that sort of thing. I can only enforce what the law allows. And I agree with you that there are changes that need to be made, because I roll my eyes, I get angry just the same as everyone else when I see something that just isn't right.
Okay, but now we're gonna start wrapping it up. So
Okay.
I need you to describe tasing to me.
It hurts.
Uh-huh.
It is the longest 5 seconds of your life.
Is it really only?
It is. It's only 5
Oh,
seconds.
wow.
However, it will teach you rather quickly, and you have absolutely no control.
Mhm.
You will go down, and no control. And I mean, absolutely. I mean, you're dropped to your knees. You get shocked. People get shocked all the time. Just imagine that on steroids and about 1,000 times or so. It's just unbelievable. And everybody says, oh, it's not that bad. Well, they're fibbing because it hurts.
Okay. I went back and watched it a couple of times because I'm just in awe, and I'm curious why you did it.
Well, you have a choice. When you go through training and all facets of training that we have to do, however, it leads to credence. So someone gets a lawyer after, say, you tase somebody, and the lawyer says, well, how do you know what it feels like to be tased? Well, let me show you the video. I know
have the proof.
exactly how it feels. And it also kind of teaches you, now you know exactly what you're doing to that person.
Mhm.
Okay, because it does, it hurts.
Mhm.
But it's only 5 seconds, and then it's over with. Once it's over with, it's over with. You just pop back up and everything's fine.
I'll take your word for it.
I will tell you that I have had like pepper spray training,
Oh,
and that is the gift that keeps on giving. And I will not ever, under any circumstances, ever do that again. Because a week later, you're taking a shower, and oh my God, your eyes are burning again. But with the tasing, it's over with, unless, of course, it's deemed necessary that you would need to
mhm.
reapply. But usually once is enough. Folks are like, no, 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 we're done.
Like I said, I'll take your word for
Yeah,
it.
it's an interesting ride. And when they say ride the lightning, that's exactly what they
Wow.
mean.
So I always end an interview with the same question. So you're going to get it. If I gave you $1 million today and said you could invest it in any program you want that's going to affect the future and you're not going to see the results, what would you invest that $1 million in?
7. Now, I cannot tell you what 7 is as far as what it means, but it is actually special victims, domestic violence, sex abuse, and different thing victims. It is a system that one helps house people that need to get out of certain situations. It provides programs, counseling, that sort of thing. And it's a program that's very underused in our state. And it's kind of linked in with the sex offender registry because it helps sex abuse victims, trafficking victims, along with the domestic violence victims. So that would be something I would give them a lot of money for because it's underfunded a lot.
Is it government funded?
It is.
Okay.
It's through the state.
Uh-huh.
And if someone is arrested for domestic violence in the state of Indiana, we are required by law, before they're released, either A on bond or a no 48-hour paperwork issue, then we are required by law to make contact with that victim, including sex crimes and any victim of that type of crime. We're required by law to make contact with them, say, hey, they're getting out. Usually there are no contact orders or protective orders in place, but as we all know, that's a piece of paper. And so that's the reason why we make contact with these victims. And the 7 program is what is used for us to make those contacts, where they can make arrangements to be in a safe place prior to that person being released. Now, they don't have to accept it, but it is there.
Okay.
And I think part of the reason why it's not always accepted is because people don't know enough about it.
Mhm. Very noble. Thank you. And thank you for being here. And I hope that we inspired someone today. And if you're a young person thinking of going into law enforcement, or even not young, even whatever age, there's a lot to be learned from Wendy Russell.